Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our second annual Migraine State of the Union as we close out 2022's Migraine Headache and Awareness Month. I'm Dr. Larry Newman, a professor of neurology at NYU in New York City and the current chair of the American Migraine Foundation. I'm joined today by a panel of 3 internationally recognized headache experts and 1 amazing patient advocate. Each of us on this panel, as you'll see, has a very strong connection to migraine, either living with this disease personally, having family members who suffer with migraine, have spent our lives caring for those people, those patients with migraine, researching the underpinnings of the pathophysiologic mechanisms and treatment options, advocating for our patients. Many of us play more than one of these roles. And I can tell you, and I have no doubt that by the end of tonight's State of the Union, you'll see that there has never been a better time to be part of this migraine community. Our union is stronger than it's ever been. Each year, our membership continues to grow, as does our reach and our influence. This year, AMF has been granted its own 501c3 status as a not-for-profit organization. And if you check our website, you'll see we have an amazingly diverse and engaged board of directors. I'm happy to say that we continue to have a close and collaborative partnership with the American Headache Society, the professional society that represents the best and the brightest minds in headache medicine. And as you know, our Move Against Migraine campaign, the campaign for which we are best known, continues to evolve and be successful. So with that in mind, let me just give you a brief overview of what's in store for you tonight. I've asked the panelists to talk in 2 different sections. The first being to explain where the field of headache medicine is currently, focusing on the causes as well as the new treatments for migraine. Following that, in the second panel, we'll review what's gone on in the past few weeks for Migraine and Headache Awareness Month, and to talk about our focus, which is getting these medications to our patients. The best drugs, the best medications, the best devices in the world don't do our patients any good if we can't get them into their hands, or if you pardon the pun, into their arms. And then finally, but not last, we'll hear from Ms. Irons, our patient advocate, to reflect not only on her patient journey, but her connection with the American Migraine Foundation. So with that in mind, I want to spend as much time as I can with our panel. So to first talk about the state of the treatment and the state of where we are understanding what's going on with the causes of migraine, our first panelists are Dr. Christine Lay. Dr. Lay is the current Vice-Chair of the American Migraine Foundation, a Professor of Neurology at the University of Toronto, where she holds the Deborah Ivy Christiani Brill Chair in Neurology and is the founding director of the Headache Program at the University of Toronto. In her position as a board member of the American Headache Society and the Canadian Headache Society, she works tirelessly on a clinical and research level to improve patient care and lessen the stigma around migraine. Joining her will be Dr. Andrew Charles. Dr. Charles is the new president of the American Headache Society, as well as a professor of neurology at the UCLA School of Medicine, where he holds the Meyer and Renee Luskin Chair in Migraine and Headache Studies. He's also the director of the UCLA Goldberg Migraine Program, which is a multidisciplinary team, as you'll hear, that does not only basic, but clinical research, education, and cares for patients with migraine and other headache disorders. So with that, Dr. Lay, let me start with you. There's been a lot of medications, a lot of excitement in the last year or so about new medications, new treatment options. What in this new treatment landscape excites you the most?
Well, there's so much that excites me, and I think we really have to go back a couple of years and look at the tremendous advancement in the science and the understanding of migraine that's taken place. Really, many patients know about this, but really goes back into the 1980s. But tremendous leaps and bounds in our understanding as migraine is a brain disease. And so now that we understand that it's a brain disease, it is not simply just a headache. And we know that headache is one clinical component, but as everyone knows who has migraine or has a family member or friend with migraine, there are other features, the light, the sound intolerance, sensitivity to touch and smell, cognitive changes, tingling, numbness, a whole myriad of different things. And so now with this tremendous explosion in our science and understanding, that's led to these targeted therapies. So for the first time, really, people with migraine and those of us who advocate for our patients with migraine and treat patients with migraine, and a lot of us on the panel have migraine ourselves or have family members with migraine, we're finally able to say to a patient, you have migraine and here's a treatment for migraine. And I think we have to still go back, with these tremendous advances in the science and the new treatments, it still goes back to advocating for yourself and making sure that you get the diagnosis right. Because if we don't get the right diagnosis, it doesn't matter about these amazing new treatments that we have that are targeted therapies. It's very frustrating for patients, and we work tirelessly to look at getting our patients these medications earlier rather than later, because many patients know they've been put through what we call stepped care. Try A, if A doesn't work, try B, and if B doesn't work, then try C, and if C doesn't work, maybe we can think about one of these targeted therapies. But that's beginning to change, and I think we're having an understanding that patients no longer have to suffer for months and months and years taking a myriad of different oral therapies, for example. We're now able to say after 1 or 2, in some cases, insurance companies require 3 treatment non-success, that we can move on to these therapies. So it's a very exciting time to be able to treat patients with migraine, and I think it's exciting for migraine patients to finally having people on their team who are working, as you said, to reduce the stigma associated with this, because we all see patients in the workplace or in the home, and many perhaps well-meaning colleagues and friends will say, it's just a headache, here, I have an over-the-counter medicine, take it and you'll feel better. But I think it's really the science, and Dr. Charles can speak to the science because he works tirelessly in this area, but it's really led us to where we are today.
Thanks. That's a wonderful beginning to this State of the Union, I would say. Christine, you've talked about, we focus a lot on medications, but there's more than just medications that have now been approved for the treatment of both prevention and acute treatment. You want to just touch a little bit about what else is available besides pills and injections?
So we have pills, we have injections, and the injections can be the once a month or once every 3 months. But we also have devices that are now available for patients. So we have many patients who have not done well with therapies that are traditional pharmacologic. There are perhaps patients who can't take some of these medications, or perhaps the pregnant patient who can't take a medication but might be able to gain tremendous benefit with a device therapy. And as I always say to patients, it always goes back to lifestyle. I look at lifestyle as the foundation of treatment for migraine. So if you say, well, I tried drug A, B, C, and I tried this device and that device and nothing's working, I think you really have to go back to basics and say, how's your sleep, for example? Is there an undiagnosed sleep disorder that we're missing? Are you looking after yourself? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you exercising? Are you moving? Are you doing some mindfulness or meditation? Are you engaging with nature? There's so much science that's emerging around these so-called lifestyle parameters that make a big difference. So I think there are many, many therapies available for patients. They can use them in combination. Sometimes the patient will say, well, this therapy works pretty well to turn off my migraine, but as we call it now in the science, the most bothersome symptom might not be the headache. It might be the patient who says, you know what, the medication helps the head pain, but I still really feel very unwell. I have terrible nausea. And so sometimes combining pharmacologic therapy with a device therapy, for example, can really be the home run for many patients.
So it's really an exciting time for those of us as clinicians. We have, not only for the patients, but we have a host of different options that we now have. These new treatments are built upon our new understanding of migraine. And I'm going to ask Dr. Charles in a little bit just to touch about it, because he's done most of the work. He and his lab have done much of the work about what we understand about migraine and other headache disorders. With all these things that are available, it sounds like there are times that you get frustrated, though.
Absolutely. And, I think there's definitely frustration for our patients because, as I said, for those who are able to get insurance, and many of our patients don't have insurance, don't have good quality insurance, and those who even have good quality insurance find there's still asked to go through certain steps. And we now, for many years, those of us who manage migraine patients have known that what we call stratified care is the way to go, because an individual patient may have a milder migraine that's triggered by weather, but for a woman, for example, the menstrually triggered migraine could be way more severe. And so she needs a different strategy for a milder migraine than she does for that stronger migraine. And so I think, you know, patients need the flexibility, and we want to be able as providers to say, you know what, I believe this drug is the best drug for you, and this is why I want to prescribe it. But sometimes we still have to go through, you know, the hoops, and sometimes we don't get through those hoops. You know, we're still met with blockade, but the AMF and certainly our colleagues at AHS are always working tirelessly to work with insurance companies and help them have a better understanding, because unfortunately, I think some of the insurance providers are still a little bit in the dark ages about the fact that migraine they think is just a headache.
Yep, comes back to advocacy, doesn't it? So with that wonderful start, Dr. Charles, I'm gonna throw it to you, and I'm gonna ask you to opine about a few different things. So we talk about, there's been this revolution in the treatment of headache, and these revolutionary new treatments have come about largely because of what's going on with migraine, what we understand migraine to be. You and your work and the work of these young people you've trained in the past have really been the foundation of where we are today. I know your goal as president of the American Headache Society is to bring research to the fore. So I would love if you can just tell our audience a little bit about what we now know about migraine, what your research is about, why it's so important for members of the American Migraine Foundation to support research, how it's going to help them in the end.
Okay, great. Thanks, Larry. If I could bring up my slides. Sorry to the audience, but I have a few slides. I'm just going to use them as visuals to try and reinforce some complicated concepts. So if I could have the next slide, please. So I am indeed now president of the American Headache Society. I wanted to put this picture up to show this wonderful group of people that are on the board, including Dr. Lay and Dr. Halker Singh. You can see it's a diverse group. It's a group from all over the country, so we're really pleased with the energy and enthusiasm and talent that these people bring to the board. Next slide, please. So this is a picture of our group, and I put this up here because it's something that I'm very proud of. We now actually have 9 full-time faculty, 3 to 4 fellows a year. We have a lab that does basic research. And this is also a tremendous group, a great group. But I put this up as a visual also just so that you can see and get a sense, I think, of the energy that these people are bringing to headache medicine. And this has really been historically a problem that we've had, is that we haven't had enough people in our field to really move things forward. But that's one of our major goals, is to change that. Next slide, please. So where do we stand? We've got some markedly improved opportunities for education and training in headache medicine. So fellowship programs are springing up all over the place. We still need to do a lot more, but that's something that we've made significant progress on and are still focused on. There's been just remarkable progress in the understanding of basic mechanisms of migraine, with improvement upon existing headache therapies, but also multiple new migraine and cluster headache specific therapies that we heard about from Dr. Lay. Next slide. So this is one of the way I represent migraine, and this is a visual that's a little bit complicated, but I think it's useful to try and put together migraine, which is just this enormously complex disease, in ways that we can visualize and understand. And here it's represented as a funnel, where at the top of the funnel are things that are individual to each patient: their genes, their environment, their hormones, their metabolism, what drugs they're taking, whether or not they have a PFO, a whole host of different factors that are individual to individual patients, that then set off this cascade of events that leads to some final common pathway. And one of the final common pathways we're focused on is the release of substances like CGRP, which I'm sure you've all heard about, which is the target of a variety of new therapies. But then a migraine attack, once it starts and happens, can also be very different in any given individual. And the characteristics of an attack may depend on, again, genes or hormones or the person's metabolic state or how much sleep they've had. So how do we put together this enormously complex event? My answer is really we have to pay attention to all of it. Certainly, we're most interested in the final common pathways, but we really have to pay attention to what makes each individual different and their own individual migraine different. Next slide. So just if you can click again. So this is just another representation of a migraine attack as another visual. This represents all the different symptoms that Dr. Lay was speaking about. But one of the huge advances in our field has been that now with what we call functional imaging studies, PET scans and functional MRI scans, we can see activation of different regions of the brain that correspond with each of these symptoms of migraine. And so we're moving beyond the notion that this is just some sort of fabricated or embellished phenomenon. We can actually see the brain changes that are taking place as part of migraine and how things change with chronic migraine, for example. And so these sorts of imaging studies have been pivotal in really helping us understand what's going on with migraine. But also, I like to point them out. I often will show them to patients because they validate what every one of you knows who has migraine, that there are, dramatic things happening in your nervous system, even if they're not necessarily manifest as something other than what we can see with a research scan. Next slide. So just wrapping up here now with this kind of visual again of the multiple different targets that we have for migraine. So we heard about neuromodulation, understanding anatomy and parts of the brain and nervous system that can be modulated by electrical or magnetic or other sorts of stimuli is really something that's been a big advance. Understanding the chemistry gives us new insight. We're very focused, for example, on the neck in migraine, something that hasn't been paid much attention to, but that's another therapeutic target. So I just want to leave you with this image that really gives you this idea that we're really working on migraine from a whole host of different angles. And this new understanding that based on an increased and broader view of migraine is opening up a host of new therapeutic possibilities. Next slide, which I think is my last. So what are the challenges? We still need to train more headache specialists. We need more funding. The funding for headache research is pitiful, frankly. And there's some key questions. And for me, one of the priorities is that for the therapies that work, where are they working? How are they working? For those that don't work, then we have to understand why they don't work. For those of you who aren't responding to our latest and greatest, you're very important to us to basically understand, what it is that's different about you and how we can address your individual migraine in different ways. So, it's a time of great progress, but boy, do we still have a lot to do. And I'm happy that you're all part of this community and working with us to make progress. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Dr. Charles. Thank you for a number of things. Number one, thank you for that wonderful explanation of migraine. And clearly, this is not just a headache. And for proving that from your work and the work of people under you, that this is clearly a disease of the brain, of the nervous system itself. It's not just in their head, it's in their brain. But let me ask you this, on the professional side, it's easy to advocate for research and to try and get more researchers into the field. But you said funding is difficult. So as the chair of the foundation, let me ask the president of the society, what can the members of our foundation do to help promote research and move the field forward?
Yeah, so I think it's important to think about the different funding sources. So there's the National Institutes of Health, the Department of Defense, so public funding agencies. And historically, they've been really terrible at funding migraine research. So increasing advocacy with those groups is important. But I also think we have to think out of the box. You know, I'm fortunate to live in an area where there are some very wealthy, but also very generous people. And so we've worked a lot on philanthropy. And so if you know people who are interested and have a you know, a reason to be donating to migraine causes, then promoting the cause to those individuals is something that can help as well. But then also, I mean, I would just put it back to you and think about what are ways that we can think about that are, you know, newer and different, you know, crowdfunding kinds of things, different sorts of taking advantage of social media and different sorts of funding approaches. So, you know, I would throw it back and say, if you have any ideas or things that you think might be useful, we're happy to hear them. And you know, and we're happy to partner with you to try and, you know, facilitate whatever you want to do in that realm.
That's actually spot on. Dr. Lay and I have been discussing various options about crowdfunding and how to identify research topics that are of interest to our members, so that we can identify researchers and labs for which we can raise donation or raise funding through donations.
Yeah, I would just also quickly say that it's not just lab research that we're talking about here. I mean, research basically is anything that increases our understanding and will advance the field. And so research about underserved populations, for example, is a huge need. It's a huge gap. And that's something that, you know, when we talk about research, we're talking about, you know, again, not just working with mice, but really, you know, clinically relevant work that will improve the lives of people with headache and migraine in the United States and worldwide. And so that's a key thing to keep in mind, is that, you know, what we define as research may really be different for different individuals.
Totally agree. Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Charles. So let me thank Drs. Lay and Dr. Charles for this first section. Move into the second section so that we can encompass the entire program. You know, we've heard a lot. These new medications are based on new understandings, but they're not a panacea. They're not only limited by the fact that not all of us respond to them, but there's lots of restrictions to them. And this year's Move Against Migraine campaign, this year's Migraine and Headache Awareness Month was focused on how we can get access. So joining me on the next part will be Dr. Rashmi Halker Singh. Dr. Halker Singh is an associate professor of neurology at Mayo Clinic and a member of the American Migraine Foundation's editorial board. She is the Headache Fellowship Program Director at Mayo Clinic and the co-director of the Mayo Clinic Headache Symposium. She's also a gifted physician and teacher and a passionate advocate. So if you don't mind, Dr. Halker Singh, could you just, and it's not a small feat, could you just review the different ways that AMF has advocated for our patients during this past MHAM?
Absolutely. You know, just to start, you asked Dr. Lay what excites her right now about the migraines landscape, and she told you it was the medications. And I will add to that and let you know that what excites me right now is not just the medications, but the community that we have been able to build for people who live with migraine. There is no better time than now, and that is because of everything that people are able to do because of the community that's been built up for advocacy. And I think that was so well illustrated this month by AMF's campaign for Migraine and Headache Awareness Month. We've given people so many tools to really tell their individual story, because that's been a big focus. The fact that everyone's experience with migraine is individualized and unique in their own personal lived experience. And AMF has done a really wonderful job allowing people to tell their own personal life with this disease. For example, AMF has created Instagram filters so that people can really use those and to, you know, share their story on Instagram if that's something that they feel comfortable doing. Additionally, all of us who live with migraine, take care of people who live with migraine, or have family members who have migraine know that this is a disease that it's a lifelong disease, but it often has sporadic attacks. You might feel really well one day, but maybe the next day you don't. And I think that adds to the stigma of the disease because people don't often understand, well, you looked really great yesterday. How come you're saying you look sick today? I don't understand. And another really great thing that AMF has come up with is this 2 Faces of Migraine campaign, where you can really show what you look like on a day when you feel well. And also, if you feel comfortable, show what you look like at your worst. Because as you know, migraine is this problem where people don't feel the same all the time. And I think it's what we call this invisible disease. It's not something that we feel the same all the time, and it adds to the stigma. So this is one way we can really show the true story of what this looks like. Additionally, we have a strong community of people who understand and people who live with this disease, because the other part of migraine is that it can be very isolating for people who have it, because people don't often share their lived experience of migraine. And for many people, they feel like they're the only person who understands what they're going through. And by being able to share their experience, AMF has done this on the website and also on their social media platforms. So other people can also relate to that and see that they're not the only ones who are dealing with the frustrations and also the hopes. And I think that community is so vitally important, both from a migraine perspective and also a mental health perspective, because as we've heard, migraine is so much more than just a headache. It really encompasses all aspects of life. And finally, we have encouraged all people, whether you're somebody who lives with migraine, takes care of people who have migraine, or a family member, to take the pledge to move against migraine. I took it myself this month, and if it's okay, Larry, I'd like to read out loud to you. The pledge is this: I pledge to tell others that migraine is more than just a headache. It is a disabling neurological disease. I pledge to reduce the stigma of migraine in my circles of influence. I pledge to be the voice for those who suffer in silence from this invisible but prominent disease. I pledge to advocate for equality and access to healthcare for all. And I pledge to never let migraine define who I am. So I think this is all really wonderful work that we are doing to build up a community that people who live with migraine can depend upon.
That's a wonderful pledge. I wish there were more people taking that pledge. Thank you. So that was a wonderful overview of what AMF has done during this month and what we continue to do. I want to, there's still problems getting access. I mean, you spoke to it. Dr. Charles has spoken to it. Dr. Lay has spoken to it. I've spoken about it. Before I even go there, you just as we were starting, you told me a little story about your daughter. So we talk about advocating for our patients. Why don't you talk about how you can advocate for someone in your family, or how you've advocated for someone in your family?
Yeah, so I shared with you all that I am not only a clinician who takes care of people who have migraine, but I'm also the parent of a teenage child who has migraine as well. And this past year in particular, I've really had to put on my parent hat and my advocate hat and to really live that experience. And I shared with you just before we started this webinar about how my daughter is a teenager, and I really want her to advocate for herself more now in an age appropriate way. And last year she was playing volleyball, and there were a few practices that she had to miss because of her disease. And when this would occur, I'd have her let her coaches know that she was out sick. And one day we got called in to have a meeting with her coaches. I didn't know what the meeting was about. We showed up and they told me that she's missed a couple of practices because she said she wasn't feeling well. I was completely taken aback because I told them, well, yes, I wrote on the form when we registered that she has migraine. She was sick with migraine. And I really had to put on my migraine educator hat right then and there, which, as you all know, I'm highly well equipped to do, and explain to them about migraine as a disease. And my daughter looked at me and said, Mom, I told them all of this already. And it really kind of floored me because, my professional community is filled with people who understand migraine as a disease. And you all are my professional community. And it really made me understand how we need to help our patients and do just that, right? Like we need to help them advocate for themselves. My daughter, as we left this meeting, said, "Mom, I'm so glad that you're my mom, and you know you're a migraine specialist and are really able to talk to my coaches and explain to them what's going on." But it also made me feel a little bit sad that we actually had to have this meeting to explain to them in the first place. It's kind of a double-edged sword.
It is. It's a shame that we all don't have one of you in our family.
Well, yeah, this is why I think, you know, what we do in AMF is so vitally important. And I think all these, you know, this community that we've built up so that people know that they're not alone in this struggle is really, really vitally important. I think the research that Dr. Charles is doing and everything that Dr. Lay mentioned is vitally important. And translating this to the hands of our patients is even more important.
Thanks. Would you like to just talk briefly about this new collaboration between the journal which you sit upon, the professional journal for the society, the journal Headache, and how you're collaborating with the foundation for our members?
Absolutely. So one of my other roles in the Headache community is I'm the deputy editor and the online social media editor for the Headache Journal, which is the official publication of the American Headache Society. And a new collaboration that we are doing right now is finding articles that we think would be really of interest to the AMF community and bringing them right to the hands of the patients and advocates. So you and I will be collaborating on those pieces and, you know, interviewing authors and also bringing headache medicine experts to provide expert commentary so that this cutting edge science that Dr. Charles really beautifully explained can be brought to the hands of patients and advocates right from the forefront so that they have access to it as well. The science is so exciting. We want everyone to know what's happening as it transpires.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm just going to tell the audience about some late breaking news, which has nothing to do with the journal, but you know, I keep alluding to how difficult it is and how frustrating it is, not just to our patients, but to us as clinicians. We have all these wonderful medications, yet it's a fight to get them in the hands of the patient. And to that end, the American Migraine Foundation has organized a multi-stakeholder meeting with the society, with the American Headache Society, with the foundation, with medical ethicists, with the insurance companies, with the companies that make the devices as well as the medications. And we're going to have this multi-stakeholder forum in the next month, a few months, in which we can come up with a consensus, for lack of a better term, about what's wrong, what's right, what needs to change, and how we can go about making these changes. So again, advocating for our members. Speaking about advocating for our members, thank you, Dr. Halker Singh, but speaking about advocating for our members, Ms. Cherise Irons joins us. Ms. Irons is our advocate and a patient voice for tonight's program. She is a leader and a leadership and perseverance coach who inspires individuals and teams to serve and lead with confidence. And you'll see what I mean in a few seconds. Cherise tells it like it is. She shares the truth and the stories people need to hear to go from surviving to thriving. I'd like to also highlight that Ms. Irons is also an AMF Emerging Advocate graduate, a program near and dear to all of our hearts, and maybe she'll talk about that in the next few minutes. But I've asked her to reflect on what her hope is for migraine, what her hope is for the future, how she's worked with the foundation, and what she sees moving as we move forward, what she sees moving forward. Cherise, it's yours.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody, and thank you all so much for having me to be part of this amazing panel. I would like to say thank you to Dr. Charles, Dr. Newman, Dr. Lay, and Dr. Singh for having me, and thank you to all of the people that decided to join us tonight, to all my peers out there that are walking and being relentless as I am with migraine. As far as hope for the future, I would say I'm super excited, as all of you are, with all of the new treatments and technology and all the different research that's being done. Dr. Charles, thank you so much for making me feel like I'm not insane in my brain. With all of the research and things that you shared, I learned something definitely with that slide that you put up, just kind of with the information that was on there. So that was pretty exciting to see. I'm very hopeful for the future. We know that migraine has no cure at the moment. However, I'm really excited with all the new treatments that I've seen in the last 3 or 4 years or so. Every year it seems like there's something new that comes out and there's new research. So I know that, you know, I'm not by myself. And I also know that I'm not alone in this community. So that's very exciting. So I'm very hopeful because I'm an optimistic person. Another thing I wanted to talk about is, I know you guys wanted me to talk a little bit about my journey with the American Migraine Foundation and my involvement with the program. So for me, my journey has been very, you know, positive, being involved in this community. I've always found myself to be an advocate because that's just who I am. I had no choice but to be an advocate for myself. When I started this journey, I kind of just, my doctors were really trying to find out what was wrong, what was going on, and it was kind of plain Russian roulette, you know, throwing something against the wall, trying to figure out what worked, what stick, and it was one of those challenging things. And finding the American Migraine Foundation was totally by accident. I entered a contest with the short film contest. I didn't want to enter the contest. I was introduced to it because my family and friends were like, you need to enter the contest. And I did, and I won second place, and the rest, as they say, is history. And when I joined the program, I think Heather twisted my arm a little bit. If you're listening, Heather, it's you know, I know she's out there, and she twisted my arm, and I got involved with the program. And I did that because I knew that we needed to have boots on the ground. So I look at the EAP program as boots on the ground, as we are the people that are the face of migraine. We're the voices of migraine. You are in the lab doing the work, doing all the research, and we're the faces and the people that are out there putting a real face to the actual research that's being done. It's one thing for you to tell someone 1 in 4 households, this billion people, this is the data. It's a whole nother thing to have a real person standing in front of you telling them, yes, I'm a person, I suffer with this disease. So we're the face and we're the boots on the ground. So that's how I look at the EAP program when I think about it. So that's been my experience with that in terms of my journey with AMF and going through the EAP program. So I've been very excited and privileged to be a part of it.
Cool, thank you. So let me ask you, must be weird to be on the other side of this, huh? To be asking the questions, to answering the questions rather than posing the questions. But you know, in your role as this coach who's there to inspire individuals, what's the best way, either you, other members, or us, we clinicians, we professionals, how do we inspire people to become active in their care, in their treatment, to be their own best advocate?
Well, I would say that for me, I'll tell you, for me, it was very difficult to answer. I'll answer it this way. For me, it was very difficult to advocate when it came to my migraine. I didn't want to talk about my migraine at all. When I started my journey and started my business as a coach, I came from being an assistant principal and working in a school with kids. So this migraine ended my career. It completely took me out of this career that I'd had for 17 years. And then I became a John Maxwell coach. And here I was, you know, in these trainings, doing trainings with corporate companies and businesses and all of that. And every single time I went to one of these trainings, someone would ask me the question of, how are you, you know, retired and you're in your 40s? How does that happen? And I never wanted to answer the question. I was so uncomfortable. There was all this resistance inside of myself. I felt a little bit of shame. I was defeated because I thought no one is going to hire me again to come into their building to train anyone, because I felt weak. I thought if they found out that I had this disabling disease, that it took me out of my career, they're not going to hire me again. So I never really felt comfortable speaking about it. And so I was dealing with this resistance. I didn't even have it on my website. There was very little on my website about my story. So I would share a little bit about what I was facing, but I never really wanted to talk about it. So then we met when we had our EAP program training. We had the communication coach, and she was talking to us about how to communicate about our story, how to share about our migraine journey with others, with our doctor, with a community person, with our family members. How do you do that in a way where it was comfortable for you, the person? And so for me, it became, I stopped hiding, I stopped resisting, I stopped feeling shameful about it. And I was, I came from being in a place of, this is my story, this is about me. So now I don't have to feel uncomfortable. So to answer your question, I would say that we have to allow our patients to know that it's not their fault. I had to get to a place where I was comfortable and understanding, this is really a disease. It's a brain disease. It's not my fault. I didn't cause it on myself. So once I got to that place, once we had the coach talking to us, she made me feel like, okay, I could communicate this information to whomever I wanted to. And I was in control of how much I shared, how little I shared, if I wanted to share it or if I didn't want to share it. It was in my control to share how much I wanted to share with whomever. So as a clinician, you have to see the person, you have to treat your patient as a person and allow them to see themselves as the people and the individuals that they are. It's up to you as the patient to decide how much and how little you want to share with whomever is asking you. And I think that was for me when I had the tools. And the communication expert, she really taught us how to really tell our story the way we wanted to tell it. And that really helped me to get more comfortable. And I just stopped resisting and just shared and realized that I didn't have to separate Cherise from her migraine. I didn't have to, I was the same person. I didn't have to separate it. That was a part of me, it was a part of who I was. And if you couldn't accept all of me, then it's okay. Those are not my people. So in my job as a coach, it became so much easier for me to help the people that I needed to help because I could show up as my entire whole self.
That's great. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to anyway. So I mean, you're looking at the panel. We either live with this disease. Anyone you see here, as you heard from Dr. Halker Singh, many of us have family members with the disease. What's your advice for someone? How do you keep, when things look bleak, what lets you keep going? What's the positivity that you have? Because you're clearly very positive. What gets you going on those down days? What keeps you going on those down days?
So for me, it's, and I'm going to say it here. My biggest thing is my faith in God. I wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't have a very strong faith in God. Lord help me not to get emotional right now, but I'm just going to be very honest with you all. That's my number one thing. I've had episodes because I have chronic migraine, chronic intractable migraine, and I also have migraine with aura. I know we don't necessarily like to say the hemiplegic word, but I have those. It's my life, okay? And so what happens, I've had those episodes in my car. I've had them, they show up whenever, wherever. We all know that already because we're in this community. And without God in my life, I've had one of those things in my car on a highway. Trust me, without God, I would not be sitting here today. So that's what keeps me going. My family, absolutely 100% my family. I have an amazing family on both sides.
Sorry.
It's okay. I have some really amazing friends who I know for sure some of them are in the room right now because they always show up for me. And most likely my mom's in the room right now because I know she told me she's going to be here. So my family, my friends, and my God, those are things that keep me going. I also garden. I picked up gardening because it's something, being outdoors, the beach. I live in sunny Florida. I actually moved here because it was recommended by one of my doctors that I live in a warmer climate because my body doesn't do well in the cold. So gardening, going to the beach, being in nature, those are things that are very important to me. And I'm always trying to be outside. Another thing is the extended migraine community, the American Migraine Foundation, the Move Against Migraine Facebook page. I don't post in there all the time. I'm an ambassador in that group. I'm not always posting, but when I do post something, it's something to uplift. And if I'm having a challenging moment, like when I had to cut my hair off because I was experiencing so much challenges with just pain from having my hair too long, I could post something and it was uplifting to someone else. So just the community itself. And having the opportunity to speak here tonight, that's been huge. If I wouldn't have joined AMF, if I would not have been in the EAP program and joining AMF, I would not be here tonight to advocate for myself and for the rest of my peers. And speaking a few weeks ago at the panel with the Medscape Live, that was also amazing. So all of those things are things that have allowed me to keep going, so I could be a voice to not only advocate for myself, but also for my fellow migraine peers that may not be able to speak up and can't speak for themselves or may not have the capacity sometimes to do that. So those are the things that keep me going. One of my favorite quotes says this, persistence is to the character of man as carbon is to steel. I believe that you can't give up, you can't quit. This disease is relentless, so I don't really have a choice but to keep being relentless myself. Some days I can't get out of bed, but there's always this little voice that says, you gotta get up, so I just get up. And even if it's just to the bathroom and back, I have to keep moving. I can't quit. So that's what keeps me going.
Thank you. And relentless you are, so thank you.
Yes.
To the audience, when Ms. Irons is talking about the advocacy program, we have the foundation has the Emerging Advocates program, which is an amazing program teaching you to advocate for yourself as well as teaching for others. And our goal is to train advocates in every state of the United States so that we have a grassroots effort to help ourselves, help our patients, help our members. So again, thank you for sharing your story with us. Since we have a bit of time, I'm going to blatantly plagiarize our spokesperson, Mr. Jim Kramer, and go into the lightning round. And what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to throw it out to all of you. And they're very informally, advice you have for our members. If they had anything you think they should know, anything you think they should do, speak up. I'll start with you, Dr. Charles, because you're my president.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to respond to that, but at any rate, I think what we just heard from Ms. Irons is really a message that I would repeat, which is just don't give up, because there's so much promise right now, and I have a lot of patients that come to me and they say that their physicians or providers told them, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do for you. And those are words that I never say. And I never say, I mean, I may say, there's nothing I can do for you today, but I would never say, there's nothing I can do for you moving forward, because there's just really weekly almost, we're seeing fantastic progress in terms of the understanding of migraine that will lead to new therapies. So, so just hang in there. That's my advice. Is just stick with it. Understand that you're not alone, and that there are a lot of people who care about you and care about doing better for this disease. So that was kind of a rambling answer, and I think I plagiarized from you, Cherise. But that's what we do sometimes in science.
Thanks, Dr. Charles. Dr. Halker Singh, it doesn't have to be the same question. Anything you'd want to just share with our audience about the field, about advocacy, about what we can do in the future?
Well, I want to echo everything that Dr. Charles said. I also want to let people know that there's a big community of headache specialists who care about them. We need more headache specialists for sure. I mean, we talk about this all the time, but I have 700 friends who all care. I quote the number 700 because that's about how many board certified headache medicine specialists we have in the United States. But we all are very passionate about what we do, and we care deeply about people who live with migraine and other headache conditions. And you know, people who live with this are not alone. So I want them to all know that. And I also want them to know that if they have migraine, they're definitely not alone. Sometimes it can be an isolating disease, but as we have learned tonight, it is a very common problem whether people know that they have migraine or not, because those of us who take care of patients are, you know, we're frequently making the diagnosis in clinic, like on a daily, weekly basis. I'm telling someone that they have migraine who did not know this, but it is very common, and they are definitely not alone in this. And, you know, reach out to a friend if you need to talk to someone, reach out to anybody, but they're definitely not alone.
Thank you. Dr. Lay, I'm going to put you on the spot now. So we've talked about addressing migraine in the community. We've talked about addressing migraine and other headache disorders in our practices. Dr. Halker Singh told us about her experience about dealing with a family member in the school. How about in the workplace? Anything that can be done in the workplace?
So it's a great segue, because I was thinking, listening to Ms. Irons and Dr. Charles and Dr. Halker Singh, that yes, you're not alone in this, and we work as partners to change that and to change the stigma. And so one of the programs that AMF is relentlessly involved in is the global patient advocacy for headache. And our primary program right now is migraine in the workplace. And we're really emphasizing, we're engaging with major corporations who have a lot of employees, because we understand that for those under the age of 50, migraine is the leading cause of disability in the workplace. It's the #1 reason people miss work, or people are at work struggling to get their report finished, but really not at their best. Migraine patients want to be at work. They do not want to quit their job. They do not want to stay home. They really, as Ms. Irons said, they want to get out of bed and do something. And so this advocacy program that we've created and working with corporations is all about educating everyone in the corporation. This is not about identifying people with migraine in the workforce and giving them some education about it. It's an educational program for employees who have migraine and those who don't have migraine, and the employers, so that everyone can understand migraine as a brain disease. They can have a better understanding of the stigma and perhaps some of the innocent mistakes they make. Oh, you know, here you look fine. You know, why can't you get this done? Or, you know, gee, what's the big deal? It's just a headache. And so we're teaching those who don't have migraine in the workforce to say, hey, you know what? Tell me more about your migraine. And every migraine patient would just love to have that opening to say, you know, a little bit about themselves. Or, gosh, you know, I heard you're having a migraine today. Could I help you finish that report? Or, you don't look well today. Are you having a migraine? Could I get you an Uber home? Is there anything I could do for you? So just offering a helping hand can often make a big difference. And there are simple adjustments that can be made in the workplace. A scent-free environment, allowing people with migraine to have a desk lamp instead of an overhead fluorescent lamp, encouraging more water stations, allowing people to take breaks, maybe adjusting the hours. So rather than that migraine patient having to be there at 7:30 in the morning, perhaps they could come at 9 because their sleep cycle is a little bit different. Or maybe it's a little bit better in today's world with Zoom, maybe a work from home day. There's many different small adjustments that can be made in the workforce that will really empower someone with migraine. But as I said, it goes beyond the person with migraine. It's their colleagues, everyone else who works in the company, and the people who employ them to have a better understanding.
Thank you. Can I impose upon you one more time, Dr. Charles? So Dr. Halker Singh mentioned 700, the number of headache specialists in this country. Clearly not enough headache specialists to treat everybody out there, the nearly 40 million Americans with migraine and then the other headache disorders. What is the American Headache Society doing to train people who are not necessarily headache specialists, but in whom these people on our call tonight will most likely see?
Yeah, well, we've got a variety of educational efforts that we're excited about. We're doing a good job now of teaching residents, neurology residents, but also oral facial pain residents. So getting people within the field of neurology more aware of migraine. And historically, as all of us migraine specialists know, it's been kind of like the ugly duckling of neurology. It really has not been given the credit that it's due or the importance as a neurological disease. And so we're headed towards the swan phase now, though, with a lot of increased recognition in terms of how important it is as a neurological disease and a public health issue. But we're also reaching out to primary care. We have a program called the First Contact Program that basically is targeting internal medicine, primary family medicine, OBGYN. So really trying to get practitioners who are indeed the first contact and often the only contact to become more aware of migraine and its impact and how best to manage it. So that's outreach. And then the other place that we're just scratching the surface is actually with medical students and even undergraduates. So really capturing people's attention and enthusiasm at the earliest phases so that it's not just an afterthought, that it really is in front of them throughout their educational process, and including, once they're practicing. So we're excited about that, and that's another thing that I would say to the AMF membership is that you can also be thinking about, if you see areas where you think education is lacking, let us know. Let us point it out to us. It's not like you want to point fingers at people, but if you come across people who are poorly educated, you don't even have to name names, but just let us know, areas where we can do better work, and it gives us ideas as to how we can do better outreach and help people to help you.
Thanks, Dr. Charles. And again, that really highlights the collaboration, the collaborative efforts between the society and the foundation, and we continue to look forward to working collaboratively with you. Well, to the audience, thank you for your participation and your attention anyway. You didn't get a chance to participate. This includes our second State of the Union. My thanks to the panel for their thoughts and for their insights tonight. And I'm sure the audience will agree, as I had mentioned in the opening, that the future of migraine has never been brighter. The state of our union has never been stronger. This is the best time there's been to be a member of this migraine community. To the audience and our members also, with your help and participation, our ability, as you've heard, our ability to fund new research and to support young researchers will continue to propel this field further and continue to do it faster with your support. When I was in a previous hospital, I remember having a team building exercise, and the leader who gave this quote, which I thought at the time was incredibly cheesy, and I must apologize, I don't remember whose quote it was, but the quote never left me, was, "The past is in your head, the future is in your hands." I think that quote is clearly applicable today for us in the trenches and for those of us living with this disabling disease. And with that, I bid you a good night.
Thank you.